Hey everybody, you're watching Bull Boom Bear Bust. My name is JJ. We're back with another dose of economic reality as always. And we've got a lot to talk about here. We've got an economy that's headed in two different directions. And what do I mean by that? Well, we're going to talk about that. We've got the people's economy, which is most of the people. We have the top 10%, then we have the bottom 90%. Drastic differences in wealth in those two groups. But we have that versus the Wall Street economy, but we're seeing some very bullish things happening in some places and some very bearish things happening in others. Now, I wanted to put this video out here to clarify because there's this perception that I'm some sort of always gloomish, always bearish. Not at all. There's always ways to make money. There's always a bull market somewhere, as a certain TV personality would say. But it's true. The name of this channel is not called Bull Bust, or it's not called Bear Bust. I had to think about that. It's called Bull Boom Bear Bust because there's bull markets, there's booms, and there's bear markets, and there's busts. Well, what's been busting and what's in a bear market? Well, the U.S. consumer has been going broke or bust, and you could say, that that's a doomish and gloomish thing, but that's just reality when you look at the savings rates, right? So a lot of what I talk about, it's not just my opinion or my vision for what's going to happen in the future. Is what's already happening, already happened, and what's happening now. And you look at the savings rate, and the consumers are close to a 40-year low. I mean, this is amongst the lowest we've been in many decades as far as the average savings that the consumer has left over at the end of the month after meeting all their bills and their payment obligations, right? So then we have the bullish side of things. Well, what do we see? Well, we see, the stock market is definitely off from the all-time highs, but look at how the stock market is manipulated and who owns most of the stocks. It's the top 10%. So you kind of have to be bullish on that. Now, I wait for better buying opportunities. I wouldn't be buying right now, but if a big dip comes like we saw in 2020, I would be buying. I still hold some stocks that I purchased in 2020, mainly ExxonMobil. I went heavy on that because remember, oil crashed down to zero. So that was like a no-brainer time to buy. And that's what I do. I wait for no-brainer times to buy. I haven't bought real estate since 2010. And if we see a price correction, I'll hopefully buy some more and maybe set my kids up with housing for when they get older, because who knows what these poor kids are going to have to face, with the cost of living in their future. So that's what I'm focused on here. But no, I'm not bearish by any stretch of the imagination. Well, you could say I'm bearish in certain things, certain areas, but bullish in other areas. Look what's happening right now. We have gold. Gold just hit a all-time high, $2,100, and I think it's going to go higher. I think it's going to go higher. We are seeing stocks very strong over the past few years. We've seen this massive recovery in stocks in 2020. That was, of course, off the bottom was about 40% drop and recovered. Stocks could go up from here. I mean, there's investors out there, big money traders, thinking that rate cuts are around the corner, or at least that rate hikes are finished. Really, I mean, you've got to be bullish on this here. Now, Jerome Powell's out there saying the opposite. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. We also have Bitcoin. Bitcoin hits 40,000 the first time since May 2022. So there are areas to make money. Remember, Bitcoin got down to 18,000 for a while. So there's always ways to make money. I mean, I don't want to say always, not every day. I guess if you're looking through thousands of stocks every day, you may find one every day. But there's definitely ways to make money if you are patient. And even if you don't spend every day seeking ways to invest or put your money in, if you're not a day trader, there's still ways to make money. You could have doubled your money in Bitcoin just in less than a year, a little over a year. But at the same time, we have other things happening. Why are so many companies laying people off? There's just a recent one here. We have Spotify laying people off here. Well, first, here's their quarter. They had a pretty good quarter, but Spotify to reduce staff by 17% in second layoff this year. Now, some people think that companies will only lay people off when they're in some financial dire straits or losing money. Spotify had a record-breaking third quarter. Spotify profits from more subscribers and spice price hikes. Growing users, subscribers are up 16%. How were profits here? They raised their price, by the way, for their streaming. Spotify's latest earnings report once again. Spotify reported a profit of $69 million for the recent quarter here. That's the third quarter versus a $177 million loss the year previous. So they are turning things around there at Spotify, but yet we're seeing big layoffs, 17%, right? So what's going on there? I mean, I think it's just greed. I don't think it's anything dire. I think the company's doing good. I think it's just greed. If companies can lay you off and replace you with AI or robotics, they'll do that. They don't have to be losing money to lay people off. So you see a lot of layoffs happening in the tech industry. A lot of them are because of the economy and lower consumer demand, but a lot of it's just greed. If they can replace you, they will, right? So I'm just trying to be honest here. I don't want to say everything's because of a bad economy or a broke consumer. A lot of it is, but not everything. Let's take a look here at gold. Gold soars to $2,100. This is out of CNBC. Analysts do not expect this to stop. Well, I think gold has a lot of upside potential, but I think more so would be silver. Silver. And if you look at all the uses of silver, the industrial uses, and the military industrial complex, I didn't know this, but I heard this on a podcast the other day, and I did a search and verified it, and it looks to be true, that each missile, I'm not sure what type of missile it was, military use missiles, obviously, has about 500 ounces of silver in it. And what the theory was from this particular podcaster was that the powers that be are keeping the price suppressed. That way it's easier for the military industrial complex to get the silver at cheap prices for these uses. Also massive uses in solar panels and other things. So heavy industrial use, you would have to guess, just based on common sense, that silver would go up along with gold. I think silver is going to be going up a lot more for those reasons that I mentioned and other reasons. I think there's going to be more of an integration into the monetary system in the future. How far into the future? That's the question. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, in my opinion. And so I continue to accumulate and stack silver here. Well, let's talk about some other news here. The dollar had a recent drop. If you look at the dollar index, dropped down to about 103. It was up to 106 here recently. Keep in mind, the dollar index is comparing the dollar to another, or basically a basket of several different currencies. These are all fiat currencies created out of thin air at the click of a mouse, basically not backed by anything tangible. So when you look at the dollar and you say, well, the dollar is still strong. Well, yes, strong compared to all these other fiat currencies. It's even been fading, though, compared to fiat currencies. But in general, if you look at over the past few years, it's been very strong. And many are surprised by that, but don't be surprised because it's just fiat currencies that they're comparing it to. Look at what the dollar buys you. Look at the dollar compared to gold. $2,100 now for an ounce of gold. And you see what's really happening with the dollar. You go all the way back 100 years ago and look at what's happened. The dollar's lost 90+% of its purchasing power. But so have other currencies, and some other currencies way worse. Look at Venezuela, look at Zimbabwe, look at Lebanon, Argentina, lots of other countries suffering massive losses in value of their currency, right? So is it a matter of time before that happens to the dollar? Well, I think so, but it doesn't mean that there can't be booms and busts on the way down in the dollar. Now, there's something happening at animal shelters here in the U.S. that paints a picture of what's happening with the economy. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But first of all, Jerome Powell's out there trying to sound like he is willing to raise rates. Jerome Powell, this is out of Fox Business. Jerome Powell says the Fed, quote, won't hesitate to raise interest rates again if warranted. And they've always said they're data dependent. He also said the Fed will move carefully on interest rates. Soft landing is taking shape. Well, let me ask you this. If you believe the soft landing bull, I call it bull, Why hasn't the Fed warned us or tipped us off to any previous economic downturn? Why were they always very positive sounding, even right before the housing bubble went bust? Right before every economic downturn, they've always been positive up until it was obvious and it was happening. So are you going to believe them this time? Right? Some will say, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. How many times are we going to be fooled, or are you fooled? Do you believe what he's saying here? Um, but traders are calling his bluff and basically have been pouring money into the stock market, obviously into Bitcoin, into gold. So it's going to get very interesting here. Now, here's kind of a sad thing here about what's happening with the economy. We have recent um, programs that have ended, the moratoriums for rents, also the foreclosure moratorium, unless you count the recent one for vets. Few people still are on the one from 2020, but for the most part, moratoriums have ended for rents and for foreclosures. So as a result, here's what you have. Here's a recent news story. We're inundated. Animal shelters across the U.S. are overflowing. So there's a couple different points I think to make out of this here. This is what I got out of the article, is that housing is a big problem, and more people moving to smaller condos and apartments, and a lot of them have HOA fees and HOA rules and pet restrictions. Also, certain landlords have pet restrictions. That's part of it. But also, I think people are having a hard time affording food for themselves, and now they're looking at their budgets and they're saying we can't afford these pets. I think that's what's happening here. This is out of the Los Angeles Times. This is pretty sad here. We're inundated, said of her organization, which provides shelter services for a dozen cities in the region. Quote, we've never had kennels in the lobby for cats. So they're so overflowed, they've now got cages and kennels in the lobby where people walk in and, the front desk and all that here. We're out of space for new arrivals. It's also being reported out of New York City, requesting that people take stray dogs into their homes instead to a shelter. So they're out there telling people to take these animals home and basically adopt these instead of bringing them to the shelter. I don't think it's people finding animals. Well, that could be part of it. They could be people out there could just be dropping their pets off in a field somewhere on the corner, which is sad. And then other people find them and take them into the shelter. But I'm sure it's mostly people taking their own pets into shelters. Hopefully, I mean, people could be that cruel; they'll just drop them off. But what happens to the pets at the shelters if they don't get adopted after a certain amount of time? Sad to think about, but that's what happens. They have to euthanize them, basically. So, sad part of the economic downturn, in my opinion. Sad part of the housing situation where the cost of living and especially housing is just really eating people's budgets up. I mean, again, you have to look at the savings rate of the U.S. consumer. So I'm bearish on sectors of the economy that depend on the U.S. consumer. That would be retail. I'm bearish on retail. But if you want to make money, there's going to be um, places to put your money to make money. I think big money, big investors are going to be pouring their money, probably taking it out of real estate and going into precious metals, and maybe even the stock market. I mean, of course, there could be a big black swan event that brings the market down, like 2020, and I wouldn't be surprised at all if that happened. Actually, so I'm always preparing for that, and I think everyone should at least put that in the back of your mind that could happen. The odds of that happening actually grow. Look what's happening across the world with all the wars right now and everything else. But another story that I wanted to get into here. Decreased consumer savings mean holiday spending cutbacks out of PYMNTS. I'm sure they pronounce it payments. And let's take a look at what they're saying here. Despite positive Black Friday numbers, where consumers stretch their budgets to do some shopping, data suggests that the rest of the holiday shopping season may be more moderate. The loss of purchasing power resulting from the persistent inflation of recent years, as well as the current economic uncertainty, might finally lead households to contain holiday spending. So that's their analysis, or at least one writer's over at Payments, one of their writers' analysis. Or will people just continue to rack up more debt and spend money? Sometimes people spend money to make themselves feel better, and that could be what happens. And, who's to say? Some people will spend themselves right into bankruptcy. Look at all the people that still go to casinos and gamble, even though the average is that the house is going to win in the end. People just love to not only spend money, but they love to try to win money at the casinos. I mean, you can win at the casino, but overall, you're going to lose if you keep on gambling. That's what the odds say, and that's what the statistics are. These casinos didn't build these mega buildings because they're losing money to people coming in and beating them at their own games, right? So very interesting. We'll have to see how this holiday season ends up. The credit card companies allow it, you're going to see record spending. If they cut credit lines and do not allow people to swipe their card so much and go deeper into debt, then you'll see a flap. You'll see a spending flap. So it's all up to the banks, and that's why we have to focus on what are the banks doing. Are the banks being more careful on who they loan money to? Well, if you look at real estate, it's a little bit of that, but it's mostly just that people are priced out because of the higher interest rates. It's not so much the underwriting criteria has gotten more strict. Also, if you look at government-backed loans, FHA, they increase the amount of home that they will back for financing. It's increased now to $1 million, right? So there's still forces out there trying to keep this housing bubble not only inflated, but trying to blow it up even bigger. But we also have deflationary forces, which is a broke U.S. consumer, the high rates, and it's going to be interesting to watch it all work out here. So now I was doing some shopping the other day. Yes, I do shop. I'm not completely against shopping. Actually, I like shopping. Actually, I like buying presents for people, things like that. And there was some big lines actually at a few stores I went to. I just did a short video on the lighting situation at Walmart. I'm going to play that at the end of the video because I'm not sure if many of you get the feed for shorts. I think you have to be in a separate part of YouTube to get the shorts, right? So I'll play that at the end of this video. I was doing some shopping. Burlington Coat Factory, very busy. Where else did I go? Old Navy, pretty busy, but most people are going to be shopping online, and the best sales are online. And I talked about this a few reports ago. The stores want people to buy online because that's less staff that they have to pay, and it's less problems that they'll have. Anyways, let's go ahead and get into the short video that I made at the parking lot in Walmart. Let me see if I can. Sorry, let me see if I can bring it up and play it here. All right, so here's me at a Walmart recently, and what's going on with the light? So I'll let you just listen to the way that I worded it here.
Hey people, something strange is happening at Walmart. I was here a couple weeks ago at this location. This is East San Diego County. I believe it's off the 8 freeway, El Cajon, Lakeside. The store is actually open. At first I thought they were closed because hardly any of the lights are working. I was here a couple weeks ago and maybe 2 rows of lights were working. I was like, okay, they'll get that fixed. Here I am about 2 weeks later, and it's even worse. Now we have 1 row of lights that are flickering and 1 row of lights at that end of the parking lot behind me that are actually working. So very strange. We're told that retailers are doing well, that everything's fine, the consumer's strong, retailers are strong. Why can't they fix their lights? Either something strange is happening with Walmart's profits and budget. Maybe it's just this location. Yes, it's been like this for 2 weeks. I was just saying that on my video. Or they don't care about the safety of their customers.
So I filmed that here in the last 24 hours, and as I was filming it, you heard the lady. She was putting her groceries in the car. I couldn't even see her; it was so dark, but I heard the voice. She said, "It's been like this for 2 weeks." I'm like, "Yeah, I know." So I'm saying in my video. She was talking about exactly what I was saying. So is it just that location? Let me know what you're thinking down below. Is it cost cutting? Are there problems at these retailers because of the theft? Is it a combination of a lot of things? Lower consumer demand plus theft, and we know that theft increases when the economy deteriorates. You see more theft. When you have more broke people, it's very simple, right? More broke people, more theft, right? So what's it going to be, folks? You let me know down below. Thanks everybody for being here. We're going to wrap this one up here. Please give us a like and subscribe if you like what we talked about. I really appreciate all of you, every one of you being here. I appreciate the super thanks, the comments, the thumbs up. Subscribe, it helps the channel. Let me know how you're doing. Hope you're doing well. What do you think about the Bitcoin 41,000? Gold, new record high, finally. So the inflationary forces are finally catching up to gold. And will we see silver skyrocket? Well, we're going to find out. And we're going to keep an eye on it. And we're going to keep stacking. And hope you are well. Talk to you very soon, everybody. Bye now.